Hello and welcome to today's 18 Group webinar on the challenges and potential of data marketplaces. My name is Sarah Underwood. I'm an editor here at 18 Group and I will be moderating the webinar. Our expert speakers today are Courtney Lewis, lead pre-sales engineer at Didactics, Mahmoud Yassin, senior data manager at Booking.com and former data architect at ABN AMRO, and Nicholas Doyen, chief product officer at TickSmith. I'll ask our speakers to introduce themselves in just a moment, but first some hints and tips on how best you can use the webinar. To the right of your video screen, you'll see a Slido panel. In that, we will ask 3 poll questions during the webinar, so please do put your answers in there so we can gauge what you're thinking. We'll split the polls into internal data marketplaces and external data marketplaces, so please don't feel left out if you are only doing one of those. You'll also see a questions panel. Please put your questions for the speakers there. We'll ask them through the webinar and try and get our answers for as many as we can as we go along. Okay, enough of me and thank you. And let me ask our speakers to introduce themselves. Courtney, coming to you first.
Hi everyone, I'm Courtney Lewis. I'm lead pre-sales engineer at Didactics. Didactics, we provide AI-augmented self-service data quality and matching software with the aim to empower CDOs, CIOs and data leaders to rapidly measure, match, report and fix their data assets. So solutions are completely data agnostic and we see a lot of interoperability with the other kind of tools like lineage and governance in the data management space, and really with the goal to provide that trusted data for a range of the use cases across the enterprise, including today's topic, data marketplaces.
Excellent, thank you. Mahmoud, over to you.
Hi, Mahmoud. I work for Booking, the leaders in the travel industry, and I work there as a senior data manager. And prior to that, I have a practical experience with building data marketplace in my previous company, ABN AMRO. It's a bank in the Netherlands. And I'm happy to be joining Courtney and Nicholas in the discussion today.
Lovely, thank you. And over to you, Nicholas.
Great. Hi, everybody. My name is Nicholas Doyen. I'm the Chief Product Officer at TickSmith. We offer a platform that can be used to white label full data marketplaces, both internal and external, as well as partner ecosystem based, as well as we cover the data fulfillment space, enabling organizations to more effectively fulfill data distribution to their users.
Excellent. Thank you all very much indeed. And let's get started. Let's do that with an audience poll. And it asks, to what extent has your organization developed an internal or external data marketplace? You'll see 2 polls come up, one for an internal data marketplace. If we give that a few seconds, and then if you'd like to vote on that. Yep, that's great. Thank you. And let's look at the second one, if we may. And while you vote on that one, let me come to Nicholas, please, and see how he sees the extent to which financial institutions have developed internal and external data marketplaces.
Yep, I think from our experience, it's pretty hit or miss. There's some organizations that have invested quite a bit in building out their marketplaces, especially the ones that are servicing data to financial institutions for many, many years. The classics of Bloomberg and Refinitiv, CME, and FactSet recently. And then for internal marketplaces, it really depends on the sophistication of the data management group inside of financial institutions. A lot of the tier 1 organizations or tier 1 banks have started that process because they already had heavy engineering force ready and available to do that. But we've seen many organizations, in the tier 2 and the mid-market space, starting to invest into internal data marketplaces and data democratization to better utilize the data that they purchase or that they produce in-house.
Okay, thank you. Courtney, what are you seeing in this space?
Yeah, I think that although data marketplaces, it's still quite early in its development, but it does really have the potential to revolutionize the way we're going to buy and sell data. So data vendors, public data, that's been around, since the start of the web, but just because of the way data is growing in the last few years, this kind of emergence of open data in mid-2000s and now to the kind of advent of cloud marketplace, this is just maturing more and more, and there's been more demand presently. as data providers are beginning to generate more data, this is a desire, but there's also an expectation from organizations now to become more data driven and to find a platform that's going to facilitate them in that growth. The open debate really is still around, what is the best way to get that data into the hands of the consumers. So you've got kind of open access portals where they have a community approach. Then you have the cloud providers where they're trying to kind of create this environment and an opportunity for their users to exchange data through the platform. I think there was some research done by Accenture saying that by 2030, 1 million organizations would monetize their data assets, and this could unlock $3.6 trillion in value. So this kind of need for the frictionless access to the data in this kind of integrated data catalog world to not only offer the data, but also offer intelligence, insights, and a competitive advantage to these organizations is critical. And I see this in the conversations we're having every day. Even in the past year or the past 6 months, the focus from organizations on data quality and this other kind of hot topic of data observability has just became so much more evident and so much more in demand. And that's really an essential component to any organization setting up a data marketplace.
Excellent, thank you. To our organizer, so our audience, if you haven't voted in the second part of the poll, please do so. And let me come, if I may, to you, Nicholas. Let's see that first a part of the poll, if we may, the results from the internal data marketplace. What do you say to that, Nicholas?
Yeah, I'm not too surprised. I mean, I think there's been a bit of a revolution, like Courtney was saying recently, with the interest in data sharing, the development of technologies, and the recognition that data is valuable. And when you look at an internal usage, I think that the answer to a good extent also matches the understanding of what a data marketplace can be. I think there's still a kind of nascency to the concept of data marketplace, to the concept of data sharing and data support. And I think that understanding also needs to be evolved and developed for us to really start to see data marketplaces reach their full potential. I think what I'd love to see eventually is to a great extent and it's critical to our business as question answers in the future, because I think that really will start to show the level of maturity that organizations have in their data democratization journey and in their data usage journeys. So I'm not too surprised by it. I think it's a great sign, and I'm excited to continue to support us in getting that number higher.
Okay, if we can we see the results? And stick with you, Nicholas, on this one for the external data marketplaces. Not such big turnout. What do you think there?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a lot of the research we've seen, one of the biggest blockers to people externalizing their data is this reticence towards the liability that's attached to it, and also the sort of expectations that come along with sharing your data externally. Often when you give it to a firm that is not your own, there's an expectation of cleanliness, an expectation of supportability, maintainability, and scalability. And that's a heavy investment that has to be made in order for that to be successful. So there's many organizations that have started on this external journey and started to think about how they would externalize their data. But I think they're very much so at the beginning of that journey. I'm still working through a lot of the pieces that need to be solved before you actually create that strategy and think about how you would operationalize that process.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. And those are all issues that we'll be coming to later on. But first, still setting the scene, let's run a second poll question, if we may. This is has only one part of it, and it covers the challenges of developing either an internal or external data marketplace at your organization. You can tick as many of the options as you like, depending on what's appropriate to your organization. And while you do that, let me come back to Courtney to talk about the challenges of setting up an internal data marketplace.
Yeah, I think Nicholas touched on some of them in the previous question as well, around the data management maturity, the kind of data cost and pricing. I think as well, something people are struggling with is this kind of like the no clear breakdown of maybe the value add to their organization and those trusted data providers externally as well. But I would kind of sum these up in three kind of main questions, which are, where can I find my data, how good is my data, and also how am I going to get access to that. So Gartner did a survey on this, and they found that 31% said they were lacking the right data. 28% said that it was poor data quality that they actually found very challenging, and only 14% were saying data quality wasn't a problem for them. My role is very much data quality, and so this is something I'm seeing a lot, and customers are wanting more value from their data. It's growing, it's coming from new sources, it's increasingly diverse, and it's being analysed and used by many people and applications across an organisation as well. And so, how are they actually going to drive the value from these kind of data products and the data services that they're providing? And again, this kind of all comes down to, what good is the data in a data marketplace if the quality is not good? And so you're measuring those kind of standard data quality dimensions, like how complete is my data, how accurate is it, how valid is it? And if we cannot trust the data, then what problem are we really solving for our clients? So it's about providing those kind of trust metrics as well alongside your data. And potentially as well, if you're looking at the external data marketplaces and bringing in that data from third-party sources, it's very unlikely that you're going to find one market data vendor that's going to provide everything. So a big problem there that we're coming across is, how am I going to standardize and map all of that data together in order to create that data set that you want to provide to your end user? And then, of course, wrapping all of this up in a very nice user-friendly experience that's accessible via cloud, and typically then self-service demand for that as well.
Hey, thank you. Bringing you in here, Mahmoud. What do you see the challenges as when you're setting up an internal marketplace?
Yeah, in my opinion, the main challenge relies with the vision, because data management, as Courtney said, is a complex topic, right? So it involves different aspects to it, from data governance to data lineage to data cataloging to data access to data sharing and access management, and etc. And the challenge with an internal marketplace is, in my opinion, how do you vision all these capabilities, as we used to call them, under one roof, right? How you're going to engineer that, because that is not an easy thing to do. You need to integrate with various applications in your company in order to exchange metadata, in order to have that kind of nice, let's say, end-to-end journey experience. Though the slogan that we use there is, let's say, the one-stop shop for all the data needs. Is very sweet and nice and everything, but to implement it is not always an easy thing. You need to have a lot of integrations. You need to architect your application in a way that is, let's say, super flexible and agile to absorb and adapt with many signals from many applications, and how you're going to put all of this together under one roof. And if a change happens here in the data quality, how it will affect the chain. So, give you an example. One of the scenarios that we've worked on. Okay, imagine that you have an application that wants to consume some data. So, through the marketplace, internal marketplace, you have to develop, for example, a data sharing mechanism. And then, what if the data that you are sharing has a certain classification or labeling that it has sensitive information? Do you allow this data to be shared through a less secure application, or an application that doesn't meet the standard? All these kind of things are connected together and affecting each other. And having one-stop shop of data under one umbrella, you have to take care of all these scenarios and the different integration between your data quality, your data sharing, the consumers, the producers, the catalog in front of it, and the lineage across all of that. So I would say vision is really important here, and you need to have also leaders who understand where this product need to be in 5 years. So if you just look, like for a 1-year vision, I don't think that will be a nice outcome.
Okay, thank you. And let's see the poll results, if we may. And Courtney, would you like to comment on these? Okay, the first one is something that didn't come up, I don't think. But what do you think? Are those problems that you see?
Yeah, really commonly. It's interesting that 55% across all three of those top ones, especially the kind of too much data in too many silos. I think we've found that there's this expectation now that because there is so much data, we expect it to be a lot easier, and like that access should be, completely seamless. But in fact, often the opposite, that because there's so much data, getting access to the right data, understanding what the contents of the data actually is, so that you're getting the right data to solve your problem is much more difficult. So I don't find this very surprising.
Okay, thank you very much indeed, Courtney. And coming back to you, Courtney. No, coming back to you, Nicholas. How can financial institutions approach these challenges and set up and operate a successful marketplace?
Yeah, I think one of the most important things that we talk about is the idea of productizing your data, and really starting to think about data in a product management capacity, whether you're doing it externally or internally. At the end of the day, data is a resource, and it is something that needs to be used correctly and needs to be understood. And as such, it needs to be prepared in the same ways that you would any other product. Mahmoud talked about how you need to have vision for your product, and sometimes we think about that vision needs to remain just for the marketplace, but I think the key is also having a vision for the data itself. And so we talk a lot about what we call the data supply chain, which is a framework that we've developed to understand how to build out data products, understand how you should take those data products to your market. Again, could be internal markets, could be external markets, or partners. And it requires you to understand that full flow of how that data product gets created, but then also how you package it, how you start to describe it, how you make it discoverable, how you make it understandable, how it can be engaged with and engaged with other types of data, in order for then users to be interested and want to use it. I think the other piece is understanding that the distribution and access is deeply tied to the place that the data is stored, the way that it's stored, and the way that it's accessible. And so if you want to be supporting different user types, you need to analyze what their needs are from a distribution capacity, and then reflect that back through the whole chain of how that data gets produced, how that data gets made available, and what information you actually attach to it. So really, it's that product management mentality and approach that needs to be implemented when approaching data as a whole, in order for that data to ever be useful to anybody.
Okay, Courtney, what would you say there in terms of approaching some of the things we've talked about as being the challenges?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with what Nicholas is saying, and approaching this and much more of, your data is a product. And interestingly, that was kind of a conversation we were having today itself, where not only the data is a product, but every kind of component that you are taking on in order to facilitate your setting up of your data marketplace is also looking at that as a product. So when you're looking at how do I create these findable, accessible, reusable, and trusted, ready-made data assets, again, I think that question that I formed in the first time was, how do we just get that data into the hands of the user? And something we're hearing a lot about today is about how you provide the trusted data for reuse around the enterprise, rather than users having this duplicated effort to create those products. And many organizations are approaching this now through that building of a data fabric or a mesh. And so that can go across all of your data stores. Perhaps you have a catalog to discover what's there, and you build the pipelines that can connect your data irrespective of where that data actually is. And that conversation, naturally leads me into the decision to join your data together with proven best of breed platforms for those elements of a mesh or fabric, such as lineage, quality, governance. Or you can go for like a one-shop all kind of platform for your data management tooling. But really, either way, an approach that we see bringing success to our clients is centralizing those controls and those policies around the center of excellence, and then allowing your tooling to share that metadata, for example, and with that goal of producing those trusted data assets that can be published into your marketplace and reused, and not having your users consistently reinvent the wheel with this. The data marketplace is essentially just a catalog, not only of your data, but other products. So looking into things like, can you provide virtual data assets from data virtualization tools, reports and BI dashboards, and even then analytical or predictive models as well.
Okay, Courtney, you've pretty much answered the next question about solutions, but is there anything particular there you'd like to say? You talked about quite a few types of text as well. So what's particularly useful here?
Sure. I think when it comes down to solutions for us, with some of the things I was saying earlier, the explosion of needs in this space is placing a lot of that pressure on IT. We're finding now that organizations are looking to democratize their data and the processes. And they have people on the business side of these organizations who they want to start owning it themselves. And it's led to more products focusing on enabling users to self-serve at all stages along this journey, not just about the consumption, but the production of those products that you're placing within a data marketplace as well. So, if you're looking at kind of data marketplace solutions, some things you might want to be looking out for, options like flexible search terms, having knowledge graphs and AI that can help you link your data together. When you're using products so that you get other products and services related to this suggested to you. And again, that generation of transparency for consumer around trust metrics on the data. So getting that kind of health check on your data and maybe even having scores and reviews. So from other users, so consumers will really understand, the lineage behind that. Where is the data coming from? How is it being used throughout the organization differently? And then is it appropriate for them as well?
Okay. Nicholas, how would you approach solutions here for the sort of self-service data marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, I think you both need to look at the solution for the marketplace itself, but then also the greater ecosystem that solution is going to sit inside of. I think everybody here is aware that all organizations have many different technologies that they use inside their firm to manage their data, to analyze their data, and to even generate that data. And so a marketplace first needs to think about how it integrates into that ecosystem and supports it, right? I think Courtney just talked a lot about metadata replication or synchronization across different platforms. And that's a very important aspect of then making it possible for data to be self-serve. One of the things that we've seen when analyzing a lot of the governance tools and a lot of the technologies that have come out recently is they're really focused on that practitioner journey. So who is the one that is providing the data and how do they set up those governance rules and things like that. But we see that focus actually makes it so that your high value resources that sit inside the CIO's function or the CDO's function are then often pulled into the fulfillment of a lot of those requests, right? And so there's this need to really push the consumer, the person that's going to be using the data, to be the one doing that discovery, doing that integration, and doing that procurement for themselves, and removing out the database architects or the governance leaders out of that process in order to have that be self-service. And in order to do that, you need to have a data marketplace that supports flexible data products that can go beyond just, is a file available or not, but can actually get into those policies and enforce those policies through that self-service manner. And you need to think about what that journey and that experience is going to be for that end user as they go about looking for those data assets and those data products that are going to be valuable to them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, both of you. And let's move on now to external data marketplaces. And let me come back to you, Nicholas. I think you have great experience here to tell us what the setup challenges are here, how these challenges can be approached, and how they can be resolved.
Yeah, so, when you start to think about externalizing your data, the first thing that comes to most organizations' mind, like I mentioned earlier, is the liability and the licensing expectations that come along with that, right? There's been a lot of discourse around the world recently about the usage of data, the fair usage and fair distribution of data. And so it's always top of mind of every business leader, every security leader, and every technology leader that externalizing data is scary, right? And so the first thing that needs to be done is really doing an analysis of what data do you plan on externalizing, and getting very comfortable with the either lack of liability or your response to any potential liability that would come along with that. Once you're past that, it's then thinking about who you want your customers to be, right? It's really coming back to that product management protocol of analyzing what are the problems that your customers are trying to solve and how can your data actually support those problems or answer the questions that they're looking to answer. And then designing your data products around those problems and providing those solutions, right? And so I think, it's often common to start at the technology or at the solution level, but it's really important to go back to basics and think about what is the problems that we're trying to solve and how can this data be applied before you actually approach the technology afterwards. There's so many different new technologies that are out there right now that support different sharing mechanisms, different production mechanisms, and different distribution mechanisms. But if you don't have that strategy of how you want to be taking those products to market, if you don't have the data products well defined and the problems that they solve, even if you have the best technology in the world, you're not going to be successful in your externalization. So it's really important to focus on what is this data product that you're going to be taking to market and why is it valuable? And when you answer that question, the mechanisms are just the tools to be able to do so.
Thank you very much, Nicholas. And bringing you back in, Mahmoud, what technologies, tools, solutions, and services are helpful when you're building an internal or external data marketplace? Taking into account what Nicholas has said, it's not just about technology, it's about, as you said at the beginning, it's about vision.
Yeah, I really support that because the vision is the leader here. However, I'm going to give like the building internal marketplace experience that I had because I didn't do much with external data marketplace. And the reason for that is when we did our, let's say, market research back, let's say in 2015, we couldn't find much of external data marketplace that's available in the market that can support our needs. So the decision was to let's build it ourselves. But I'm not sure what's the situation now, but looking into the poll, I think it's still the case. So for the internal marketplace that I've built together with my team's previous company, ABN AMRO. So we used like an Azure stack for that. I mean, it's pretty much in Cloud Vendor can do the same. So the same services that I'm going to mention, it's equally can be found in any of the 3 or 4 big cloud service providers. But for example, for hosting applications, we use like app services, which is a service from Azure, in order to host your application because we wanted to do like a web experience. So the data marketplace is a web shop. You log in and then you see the cataloging feature where you can search and find and your data assets. And once you decide this is the data set or the data asset I'm looking into it, you can see in a nutshell the data quality of it, who has access to it, the popularity of it, the lineage behind it, the link to the business and the physical worlds. And all of that need to be hosted in, let's say, an app service like service. And for the front end, we use the Vue.js. It's like a very common also practice. And under the hood, we used like some APIs to exchange the metadata between the data layer and, let's say, the front end layer. And we use the Django framework in order to do that. And but again, this is not really about, or let's say, trying to give advices here. You can use pretty much any technology to develop the same thing. It's all about the vision. But the point that I want to emphasize that was really helping for us is the data layer. So because building a data marketplace and handling topics like lineage is so complex, so we've decided to go with 2 different backends. So we have a SQL backend and a NoSQL backend. And the reason for that is we wanted to get the best of both kind of worlds and then to empower the data marketplace that we've built. And we use the SQL, let's say, backend in order to answer the right-away aggregations and the quick and swift kind of decisions you want to show. So, for example, in one page, we had to show all the details about the data sets and, for example, how many data sharing agreements has been done with this data set. What's the quality of this data set? Who's using that in the organization? It's coming from which business line and who are the producers, who are the consumers? I would say those are really easy queries that you can fire against the SQL database. And the usage of the NoSQL database is really for lineage needs because lineage is so complex if you think of it. If you want to gather or if you want to link business metadata with a technical metadata and then operational metadata in one kind of wrap, which is the marketplace, that's not an easy exercise. So you have to, sometimes NoSQL databases are so important here because you can traverse between any route in an easy way or an easier way than doing it in SQL. So these are, let's say, sort of the technologies, and yeah, naming them. I mean, for the SQL database, Azure SQL database was the one, and for the NoSQL, it was Cosmos DB. And as I said, they're all equivalent services in all the GCPs or AWS. So yeah, and then we also, one of the good tips that we've done after some kind of iterations is we've created like a very common layer called BFF, so backend for frontend, where you can, if you want to do some light integrations as well, but you don't want to push the database, so you can have like a middle layer between the front end and back end in order to do some data integrations, because we found that we need that at a certain amount of time. So yeah, just for the sake of time, I think that was the whole ecosystem technology that we've used.
Thank you. Okay, Courtney, what would you say here in terms of solution services, useful things? Are there been, some of them have been mentioned? You've mentioned some, Malcolm has mentioned some. Where do you see the key solutions in terms of text, etc.?
Yeah, so again, my background is primarily data quality, so that is kind of the angle I'm coming at this from. And so if I'm kind of taking that into consideration, I'm looking at solutions that are going to primarily help users produce those trusted data assets that are going to be published into their marketplaces. So that comes down to the generation of those trust metrics, looking at matching and the enrichment of data assets as well. And then also that kind of perspective of data observability from that kind of data ops team. And so when I'm looking at solution services helping, you kind of build up your internal, external data marketplace. Again, there's not going to be one vendor that produces everything for you. So commonly you'll be ingesting that data from multiple sources, having that divergence on the contents, formats, the access controls that are in place there, and utilizing platforms that are going to allow you to standardize that data is going to be incredibly important. Then when you consider the consumption of data, again, users are going to want to trust metrics on that. So looking at how you can kind of do that assessment, produce the scores around whether the data is golden or not, and assessing that data quality against thresholds that have been set. And then looking at data observability, which is kind of more of a hot topic at the minute as well, that we're hearing commonly. If you're setting up a data marketplace, you want to make sure that you're tracking things like the data drift, the schema changes, and having knowledge graphs in there, to be able to assess, comparing old and new data sets, and then minimize the disruption of those assets that you're providing, whether you are the producer or the consumer of that as well. So those are all kind of solutions that I would commonly be hearing people looking for whenever they are building out their data marketplaces.
Okay, thank you both. And we have some audience questions, so let's run through a few of those if we may. And I think I'm going to come back to Courtney with the first one. It asks something we did speak of earlier briefly. It says, what would the panel say about the level of data quality, accuracy and timeliness provided by commercial data marketplaces? Perhaps that one's less so for you. Nicholas, do you want to step in for that one?
Yeah, sure. Again, it's going to be a hit or miss. It's really how well the organization that's taking their data external is thinking about it like a product, right? I think a lot of the concepts that Courtney just brought up of how data changes very dynamically and how that can affect the downstream user. If you aren't treating those changes like you would with a product and performing change descriptions and release notes and things like that, it ends up making it so anybody that's actually accessing that data is not going to be able to effectively land it and use it inside of their own internal firms. I think one of the other things that is really interesting when we start to look at the history of externalization of data is a lot of the mainstays inside of the financial world are organizations that are still using the same technology from the 90s. And they have their own connections that they expect you to use. They have their own protocols, their own file structures, their own schema definitions. We have the concept of fix files, and yet fix is really just a key value pair that is fully customizable by any institution. And so a lot of these old file formats, file structures have been abused that makes it very, very painful to actually land and understand the quality of the data that you're going to be receiving. And so I'd say from a lot of those institutions, the data quality is pretty poor. For some of the new ones that are coming in, especially ones that are leveraging some of the newer technologies like Snowflake shares or Delta shares, they generally are going to be coming from a very standardized file format and data format, which means that the structures are going to be more accessible and more ETLable for an organization. And so I'd say a lot of the newer ones that are popping up and have started on their data externalization journey are better equipped to support the consumer and provide data products that are really valuable and in a good state. So it depends which firms you're interacting with. And I do think some of the history affects a lot of the quality of the data products that you're going to be receiving.
Okay, thank you. Mahmoud, one for you, and back to your experience at ABO and AMRO, and to ask, where are the costs in setting up these types of data sources as in marketplaces, and where is the ROI? So where are the costs and where is the ROI?
So yeah, so the costs, yeah, you have to look into it from two perspectives: the capex and the opex side of it. So let's say the investments in let's say the tools and services in the current world that we are living in, and especially in the cloud, that wasn't that much costly, right? Because you use let's say fast services, you pay as you go, and all these concepts are okay to use. But the main challenge is in the manpower that you need to build that, and the amount of analysis and the amount of research that you want to do, because you are building, for example, an internal marketplace to tailor to your needs, right? So your needs need to be clear, and you need to be able to speak to the people who are going to use it. So don't like dictate it as, okay, this is, you know, how I think the data marketplace will look like. It's meant to solve the problem. And I think that's the main point here. Data marketplaces are meant to facilitate, let's say, and break the silos between the two kind of roles of producer and consumer. And if you're going to go with an internal marketplace, then you need to really understand the problem and how it is shaped in your organization. And that's something that has to be tailor-made if you're going to go with that approach. If you go with an external approach, that's a different story. So I would say the most investment would be in, let's say, the manpower that you need to build such a thing, because it's not an easy exercise to just, you know, that you will do with a couple of developers and, oh yeah, I have a marketplace. It's really complex, and you need to think of the whole ecosystem, the amount of integrations we need to do, what kind of applications we are going to bring under the hood. You can pretty much use an external application that you have, for example, for years. So for example, you're doing your data quality using one of the Informatica platform, right? Do you need to really get rid of that completely and then build a new one, or you want to build some sort of an integration between the current process that you have and then link it to the developed marketplace? All these kind of questions you have to think, and each one has a different consequences, I would say, on how the return on investment will come back. To share a little bit of a practical knowledge also here, it took us like 2 years to build, let's say, a really proper data marketplace that we were super proud of, and it was also nominated for many awards, because yeah, it really brings the silo between the producer and the consumer. So you can just imagine, and it wasn't an easy ride, so we had to rewrite certain capabilities many times, because as I said in the beginning, don't think from your own perspective, think from the user's perspective of going to use it. So there was one capability that we had to rebuild from scratch after, let's say, putting into production, and then we saw like no one is using it. So why? Okay, because we didn't understand the problem. So let's say, look at from the far right to the far left. So what I'm going to solve and what will help people to, let's say, that are struggling. And I've seen the numbers in the bowl with the data silos, and then think backwards how this will be done.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. And Courtney, here's one for you. And it asks, how can you stop data quality and accuracy degradation in a self-service internal data market?
So I think that is about, you know, placing an ongoing monitoring and data quality service as part of that. So if you are constantly measuring that data that you are pushing out and providing as a product to your users, and providing those kind of trust metrics around that, so measuring the accuracy, measuring the completeness, validity, and understanding is what the data is saying really in line with the reality of the data content itself, then you can be more confident in the data you're actually providing as a product within there. So centralize those controls and do that consistent monitoring and measurement of your data as well.
Okay, thank you. And I have one last one here for you, Nicholas. Well, it's two. I need to stick them together. And one says, just a thought, could we turn an internal data marketplace into an external data marketplace? And the other one says, we'd like to set up a commercial data marketplace, but don't have the resources to do this. Could a third party manage this on behalf of our firm? And how would that work?
Sure. Yeah, I to the first question, absolutely, it's possible, but it depends on how you've architected your internal data marketplace, of course, right? If your data products have been designed specifically for internal usage and contain information that is not something you want to be externalizing or you cannot externalize, you're obviously going to have to do some management in order to get those products into a state that they can be distributed externally. That said, the technologies are often very much so the same, but it depends on how broad of a user base you want to be addressing, right? Many organizations may be on one cloud or two clouds, but not on all 5 clouds. And I use 5 to include Snowflake and Databricks inside of that. And as a result, being on only 1 or 2, it limits the options that you have for distribution. And so it's important for you to think about, to what extent are your users going to be outside of the clouds that your data initially sits on, and in what forms do they need that data distributed to them in order for them to get the value that you've identified that data product as having. We have many implementations where we have hybrid marketplaces where it goes beyond even just public or private and actually starts to look at different experiences and products that are presented to different types of users that have logged in. And that's really the state that you want to get to so that you can leverage discriminatory pricing, or you can be presenting data products to very explicit types of users or types of organizations that you have certain agreements with. So it's definitely a use case, definitely suggest looking into it, because there's a lot of value to externalizing your data in that way. To the second question, we definitely see this as a model, but there is some risk to it. So there's been a lot of data marketplaces that have popped up that are run by third parties. The Snowflake data marketplace is a great example of one of these. And a lot of these data marketplaces have expectations and flows that they've defined as how they want to be running their marketplace. And so if you don't have the resources, this can be a very good approach for you to go down in order to take your data to market, but it does limit your optionality and your functionality of how you can actually serve that data to customers and how you can meet those customers where they're needed. Without going too much into a sales pitch, we do have a platform that you can build your own data marketplace on, and we see a lot of organizations wanting to have data products that they take externally, but don't have the technology or the approach necessary in order to do so, but don't want to be bogged down by a lot of the expectations driven by the public data marketplaces like Snowflake. And so that's really where we see our own position fitting. I think there's other organizations that are also starting to come into the space to serve that type of functionality. And it's really going to depend the level of control that you want to have over your data product practice, and how you want to be servicing your customers downstream.
Excellent. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you to our audience for your questions and to our speakers for your answers. That's great. And coming back to my questions, let me come back to you, if I may, Nicholas, to provide a brief case study of a firm that has developed a successful internal or external marketplace.
Sure. I'll talk a little bit about an external one. Again, sort of a hybrid one that we have. We work with many of the largest exchange organizations, and they use our platform to power their external data marketplace or even internal marketplaces that are not public. What we've seen a lot of organizations that do this activity getting value from is they make revenue directly from licensing out the data, but it's also a great entry point for many of the other services that they offer business-wide. Right, data at the end of the day is a resource that is being distributed and can be used to answer questions. But when you augment that data with strategies, with insights, or with other types of activities that the firm can offer, the data serves as just an entry point for that sales process. So we actually have one customer that has gone on record saying that 50% of their new business-wide has originated from the process of licensing data out. And so it can serve as this great entry point, this great lead gen tool, as well as giving an opportunity for you to better collaborate with your customers, or even foster those relationships and turn them into partners where they're contributing back to yourself.
Lovely, thank you. Mahmoud, you just discussed how you did this before. Is there anything else you'd like to add in terms of how people are doing this successfully?
Yeah, I think after a lot of iterations, as I explained before, and then once we launched the product and then we measured the adaptability of it, the results were amazing, because it seems that there's like this, let's say, gap between communication and also transparency between the people in the consumer and producer side, and data marketplaces fulfill that. So we saw big spikes in the consumption of data, and we have like more people who are hungry to use the data because simply they now see it and they know that it exists. Before that, it was sort of a roller coaster, right? If you know someone that knows someone that knows someone, you may get to a correct data. And that's sort of, let's say, the data swarm that many organizations are in it if you don't have like a proper governance in place. And now with this opportunity, in a nutshell, you can open a portal with a very nice experience where you can see all your data assets for organization next to its quality, next to who's using it and what purpose, what kind of use cases that is happening and using this data, in what kind of classification. Is it a regulatory, let's say, case? Is it like an operational case? Is it like an analytics case? And then let's say the ability to see the lineage. Okay, this data came from that source that has this kind of credentials and this kind of, let's say, confidentiality rating or integrity rating or whatever, like processes around it. Who is the owner? I mean names here, so you can instantiate a discussion with this. Okay, I need your data, but I find it with this issue. Can I raise data quality? And then these kind of, let's say, facilitation made it really appealing to people. And then we started to really see true value by the amount of consumption and the data sharing requests that were requested. Okay, we need that for that use case. And I would say it was an amazing product and really helped people to get access to data, see the data, feel it as well. Because before that, it was sort of, you have to go to a catalog that is not synced with, let's say, what's happening on the consumers and what kind of use cases. And if you want to get a taxonomy of your business, you have to go to another tool and so on and so forth. And data marketplace really unites all of this in one umbrella. So it was really, really good thing to do, actually.
Excellent. Thank you both very much indeed. Nice illustrations indeed. I think we have time to run one last poll. Again, it comes in 2 parts. So please could we run the first part of the question, which asks, to what extent is your organization gaining or expecting to gain business benefits from a data marketplace? This time, the first part, an internal data marketplace. So if you'd like to vote on that. And Courtney, let me come to you, if I may, to talk about where you see the benefits of an internal data marketplace.
So I think it's important to just kind of note that data marketplaces, I don't think there ever is any kind of one silver bullet with any data management challenge, and they aren't necessarily the one silver bullet when it comes to connecting the people who want to monetize and use the data to the data itself, but it is an extremely well conceptualized, provisioned area of technology that's really worthwhile exploring. So outside of your kind of really obvious benefits, getting data into hands of your users and in a centralized fashion, hoping to reduce that pressure in your IT teams and become a more data-driven organization. I kind of look at this a little bit more granularly from my point of view. So first, if you're bringing external data into your organization, it's going to provide you with a lot more opportunities for exploration and adding kind of dimension to your own internal data as well. So for example, enriching your existing database with public data, and it can drive values for your teams. So data scientist teams, for example, would now have new data to test their models with and new sources of information to build out more analytical models on. I think there's, again, a Gartner study that said, data teams are twice as likely to generate more benefits from external data and 3 times more likely when sharing internal data assets as well. So, it's going to massively affect how you outperform your competitors when looking at business value metrics as well. And then I would kind of also look at it from a point of view of, as more businesses, and I think this is something that has been touched on, and there's a question that Nick answered really well earlier around, as more businesses are demanding this external data, the value of that in the market is going to increase, and then that may enable you, if you're set up correctly, to turn your data sets into a new revenue stream. So that could be another potential benefit to your business, where you have a data marketplace, and if you have a secure enough platform to monetize and distribute that data products that your organization is also creating. And I think, Forrester reported that 60 to 70 something % of all data within an organization goes unused. So if you can begin to reuse and monetize that, then it could be a potential revenue stream for your organization as well.
Okay, lovely. Let's see what our audience think on internal data marketplaces, what benefits they would expect to gain. Thank you. What would you say to that, Courtney? Catching up?
Sorry, I haven't fully read it yet.
Sorry.
There's some business benefits. I mean, I don't think that massively surprises me. Internal. I think maybe Nick would be a better place to answer this one.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Let's, if we may look at the poll on external data marketplaces, and while we do that, Mahmoud, can you talk a little bit about the business and operational benefits here?
Yeah, so definitely. So from a business point of view, the adoption of the internal marketplace was really, really good, because it really helped people to think even what others are doing in their business lines. So in the big organizations, you have like different departments, business lines, etc., and so much they are operating in silos. So each one is doing a use case, and you will be surprised if you look a little bit and dig deeper. They actually use the same data. So if you need like a use case to understand the customer 360, I think that's really much important for every business line. But the thing is, like, everyone is doing it in a silo. And if you bring that to a marketplace where it's super transparent who's using what, we really trigger the thinking of reusability as well. So how you're using this kind of integration, and can I, let's say, use it as well? And we even thought of how to clone or even make one data set as a shareable across the organization so everyone can benefit from it. So that really picked up very quickly. And on operational side, I think what we discovered after introducing the data marketplace is that we had less data duplication, because, adding back to the previous example, everyone, if they are going to reinvent the wheel and rebuilding, the data over and over, because simply they just need to get their own things done, you cannot also blame them, right? I mean, everyone wants to get, let's say, a certain task done or meet certain kind of KPI or a goal. So they just rush, and during that rush, you create a mess, and a mess becomes a bigger mess, etc., etc. But if you make this really transparent, and then people now can co-work together even at a certain point of projects in order to produce, let's say, one shareable data asset that everyone benefits from it, that was really also a big cost saving for us, among, let's say, many consequences of that, because it's not just a storage, it's data engineers, it's manpower, it is a lot of parameters that goes into that kind of optimization as well. So that was really also good to monitor and also to evaluate after and before kind of situation.
Okay, that's great. And Nicholas, perhaps you'd like to comment on the external marketplace poll results. Could we see those, please? Okay, similar to, oh no, we're on the other one, sorry. Similar. No, that's the internal one. Can we see the external one, please? That's it, thanks. As you might expect.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, at a certain point, one of the biggest questions that we get asked often is, how much can I license my data for? What's the price that I can go to market with? It's a very difficult question to answer, right? Because again, it comes down to how are you going to price it and how are you designing your data products as you take it to market. You could be going just purely based off of a bytes per request type of ratio. You could be doing it just charging for the total volume, or you could be charging it on the expected value that's going to be derived from that data for the institution. And when you don't have a firm understanding of that pricing, it's very difficult to understand what that business benefit actually might be from a strictly commercial capacity. I think one of the other things that a lot of organizations, as they look at externalizing data, are doing is they're seeing it purely as a data asset that they are distributing to others, as opposed to a partnership building relationship that they create with that organization. If you stop just at here's the data, you can use it now, then of course it's only going to bring the commercial value that it's going to bring to your organization. But if you start to look at how you can collaborate on that data with other organizations, potentially also pushing them to be sharing data back with you and creating this partner relationship, the business benefits start to skyrocket. Courtney brought up one of the research articles that's talked about this situation where when you're joining external data with internal data, you can really derive benefits way beyond what you would just focusing on one or the other. And one of the best ways to start to develop those relationships with external providers or people that could become external providers is by offering some of your data yourself. And so we see a lot of organizations kind of following the journey of starting with internal marketplaces or distribution, transitioning to an external marketplace and distribution, and then transitioning from there into a full partner sharing model where it's a bi-directional relationship with those partners where both organizations are sharing and receiving data and collaborating on that data together.
Excellent. Thank you, Nicholas. And coming to our last item of today's webinar, I'd like to ask each of our speakers to provide some advice for practitioners working on data marketplaces. And Mahmoud, can I come to you first, please?
Yeah, sure. So the first point I have is from a practical point of view is the internal data marketplace, in my opinion, should be developed centrally, but then with the idea of being used decentrally. So what I mean here, okay, maybe you centralize the building of that internal data marketplace, but then the usage of it won't be done like the old traditional way with, let's say, a set of IT people. No, you're building a product to be used by others. So the role of IT here need to transform to be like sort of facilitators rather than the doers of data in general. So that's a very important tip. Second one is the self-service concept of data marketplaces is really crucial because in the now or in the near future or in the far future, the data need to be brought closer to the people who need it. So whenever you develop a feature in your data marketplace, think of it as how it can be used in a self-service manner. How can I empower, let's say, the data owners and data stewards in my organization to do day-to-day data activities themselves without being, let's say, that man in the middle that need to execute or click a button or do something. So how this can happen, I think that's really important. Third tip for me is don't underestimate the AI and what it can bring for automation and also help you here. So very quick use case like in data quality. So we've used a lot of AI in order to kind of suggest and predict data quality rules for data sets without, let's say, the manual intervention of each data owner or data steward to really dig in their data and see, oh, I need to define that. And that helps us a lot. So we've reduced 70% of the time of data owners and data stewards to create data quality rules by using AI and machine learning techniques. And then they still need to approve or reject these kind of rules after suggestion from the machine. But that helps us a lot to adapt and also build quicker. So these are my 3 points.
Okay, Courtney, your ideas here.
Yeah, so first piece of advice would be around identifying, the people and the applications that are going to support you in creating your data marketplace. And my advice is more for the data consumers and maybe how we can shift some of that, some business benefits to more is be selective about the data that you're going to be requesting. You know, go for the low-hanging fruit here and that's going to provide you and prove the value of a data marketplace much faster. I think we have this kind of habit of wanting to really focus on our pain points, the things that are causing us a lot of trouble whenever we're, you know, bringing on a new product, and oftentimes that's not the way to go. And if you want to really see the business benefits of this, tackle the things that are easy first, the things that are you're constantly reusing, and then go after the much harder things once you have those things in place, because they're going to be a lot quicker to turn around. Second, I would say perform the fine-tuning of your raw data to get it into that ready-to-use product and produce those insightful trust metrics and health warnings on your data for your consumers, so that they understand, you know, where that data is coming from, what shape it's in, and they better understand the product that they're actually using and being provided there. And then thirdly, something that I think both Nicholas and Mahmood have put really well previously is putting those appropriate licensing models and contracts in place if you are going to be exposing your data externally to consumers. And this will just help you with like the entitlements, understanding who's using what data and making sure that you're not breaching contracts. And we have a client who set up an e-commerce data shop, and they identified a huge loss of revenue that was really just down to their lack of understanding around and controls around who was accessing the data and why. So having those appropriate access rights and, you know, controlling the spend there as well as an organization is just going to massively help you with the revenue streams if you're selling that, or as well as if you're consuming data from external sources as well.
Okay, I'm very conscious that we're almost out of time. Nicholas, a final few words from you.
Yeah, I'll keep it very short and just to reiterate what I said earlier, you know, start thinking of data as a product and go back to the basis and identify what your strategy is to take your data to market and what problems are you trying to solve for your customers. You have to start there. I think if you start with the technology, you're going to start to build out a platform that's not actually going to serve the needs of your customers and properly take your data to market. So start at the basics and think of it as a product.
Excellent. Thank you. And thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their expertise and experience. Thank you too to TickSmith and Datactics for sponsoring today's webinar. Before we close, just a few 18 group items that may be of interest. You can register for our 16th of November RegTech Summit in New York, or our Singapore RegTech Summit, which will be on the 29th of November. You can see those bits at the bottom of your screen. And at the bottom of your screen, you can also see the 8th of December webinar on market data in the cloud that you can sign up for. That said, that's it for today. So thank you again to Courtney, Nicholas and Mahmood. And thank you to all of you who've taken part in the webinar. Please complete our feedback form, as we're always keen to hear your views and improve our products. Meantime, thanks again and goodbye.